Welcome back. Episode 2 of the Portland Pod, talking NSL with JMac. On the earlier edition, what did I do? I reflected on the championship run, which was a little bit rushed, but I think I covered everything I needed to, and I just wanted to give props to those teams that I had to pass along the way. I was doing a power rankings a few days ago and found that it has never been as tough to win a game in the league that it currently is. There are lots of great teams. There is going to be so much competition for those playoff spots, and I think it's really exciting. It's going to add a lot of value to games later in the season. I don't think there's anywhere near as many tanking teams as there has been over the past few years. So I think that's really good for the league. I think that makes it the best product it can be when there's teams fighting from all the way down the conference standings to try and get into the playoffs, because that's their goal. So well done to all the teams involved. And today I just wanted to recap my off season so far. So winning the title was great, and I very much did enjoy it, and I found it to be a huge weight off my shoulders to finally have an achievement that I think reflected what I deserved and what I'd earned during my time so far in the NSL. So now I feel great, and I was able to go when the site flipped. I was able to make some pretty big moves, and I was just going to go through my thoughts on those and how the discussions went, and just talk about that trading process. I'm just going to get the transactions up so I can follow. That's right. So the site flips. So I've been talking before the site flipped quite early on in the piece with Clem about moving Westbrook. Now, everyone's going to say, oh, you're dumping him because there's talk in the media about him being bought out, or he's lost all these rating points. It wasn't anything to do with that, and I sincerely mean that. I'm in talks to get a player in, quite a significant player who would be playing that same position and whose skill set doesn't quite mesh as well with Westbrook's as Harden's did and as Durant or Kawhi's did. So that was my main reason to move it. Second reason was to diversify and get some more fluid parts, some more players, some more assets that I could move around, because I had quite successfully and happily consolidated a lot of my value into 3 players, into the 3-headed monster, which succeeded beyond my wildest dreams and got me a title this season, and the previous season got me to 78 wins, and devastating injury kind of caused me to not make the finals and not have a chance at another title as well. So the experiment totally worked, but it was getting to a point where I had 3 salaries, 45 million plus, and it's just so restricting in what you can do and the moves you can make, and you're just locked in to a particular, not just personnel, but a particular structure. So my goal was to change away from that and to get a few more assets in and just be a bit more open stylistically and personnel-wise. So as always, great talks with Clem, and I wanted more and he wanted more, and we ended up coming to an agreement of Kyle Lowry, Seth Curry, and Derek Favors for Westbrook. And the reason that worked for both is that Westbrook, regardless of what the overall ratings say, is a significant upgrade on Lowry. Yes, he's more expensive, but in terms of winning basketball games, I think in 2K, it's not even close. I think Russ has got such a high floor, and the way he's built and the attributes are just going to age well despite what happens in reality. That's truly how I feel. And I suppose Seth, speaking for Clement, based on our discussions, Seth was coming off the bench for the Kings. Derek Favors was coming off the bench for the Kings, possibly. So it was a starting point guard swap effectively for the Kings. And I knew that was going to be the best package I would get. Clem, not only a reasonable trader, but has faith in Westbrook as well. Didn't really believe didn't let the media, the NBA media in real life, dampen his 2K expectations, which I really appreciated, and I think was a really mature way to look at it. So Kyle Lowry and Seth Curry. So I didn't want Lowry because then I've ran into the same position that I was in, having a point guard that will not be maximized on my team when I hopefully ideally get this player in who is going to run that position. So I took a long time to find a suitor for Lowry. I was quite quick to find a suitor for Derek Favors. I spoke to a few teams, but the team that got back to me was the Warriors, and they said they'd like a backup big, and they had a few wings, and that Robert Covington was available. He just signed a 2-year extension and was still eligible to be moved. So I was really happy to have Covington back. I think I've had him every season so far. This might be his fourth go around, and he would fit so well into my team as that purely defensive, hit an open three guy, and he could play maximum minutes just defending and just passing the ball, making smart plays, making great defensive plays, and hitting threes. So he was in, and I was happy to keep him. As soon as I'd been able to flip the Favors piece, and I had to add a couple of second rounders to it, I didn't want to try and move Covington on for any extra value. He was a piece I really wanted to keep. So he's locked in. I wasn't sure what to do about Seth. In a perfect world, he's maximized on my team because I think I'll have a lot of really tall wings who draw a lot of gravity and who are very capable on their own. But if I've got a shooter like Seth, despite his physical and defensive limitations, I think that would really, really open up the court for the rest of the team. So I was 75% in on Seth, but I really wanted to move Lowry. I didn't want that piece. And it was nothing against Lowry's impact. Contract was all right. I know he's going to come back so ripped in the NBA after getting shamed and being pretty disappointing and unreliable for the Heat in the playoffs. I know he's going to bounce back. And I'd almost given up hope. I had little bits of interest here and there. I had a deal with Orlando, all locked in. So I was going to get Kevin Love from Orlando for Lowry in a swap. And then Dylan was offered a much better team, and he took it, and he took over the Raps. And Dylan had all these deals that were set in principle, and then as soon as he left, they were all just dead. So there was a move that the Cavs and Orlando had, I believe, that no longer was happening. So then there was no need to get a point guard in, and then the Kevin Love deal was dead. So then I had to find Lowry again as the site flip was approaching. So I had the Covington deal set with favors and seconds. I was happy for Seth to come to me. I did not know what was going to happen with Lowry. So he was pretty hard to get onto because he was fraternizing over in Europe. But I finally got onto Josh from the Wizards, and we went back and forth for a few days, and he was incoherent and drunk and naked and having a great time, and I was just being an NSL nerd in wintry Victoria. But he finally did get back to me. He was off to a fair somewhere with some Swedish women. Good man. And we finally got talking about Kyle Lowry, and he didn't have one piece that was able to fit in terms of value or salary, but he had pieces. So the deal we started talking about was, what does it take? What do I have to add to Kyle Lowry to get Bojan Bogdanovic and Aaron Gordon off you? Now, as his roster was constructed, at least one of these guys was coming off the bench, if not two in some scenarios. So the upside for Josh was that he was getting that third option, floor general, defender, playmaker that fits really well with Embiid as a passer, pass first, and a really great running mate with Devin Booker. So that made a lot of sense. I understood the value-wise might be a little bit short and the salaries didn't quite match. So I added in Rudy Gay. I added in pick 59 and I think 5 gems or something as a A little wristy for Josh on the way out. And that deal was done. So after feeling like I was just going to have to take Lowry and figure it out later, the pieces ended up being Covington, Curry, Bogdanovic, and Gordon for Westbrook, Rudy Gay, a second, and some GMs. So I was happy with the versatility I'd gotten back. I was able to double the pieces. So I've now got 4 players with some kind of trade value under contract that I could now move again or move on. And that's exactly what I did. So before the site flipped and we were officially able to trade, I moved on Aaron Gordon to Orlando Magic. So I have some great discussions with Melo, and she was keen to make a move after having some deals fall through. She felt that Lauri Markkanen and Kevin Love played a very similar role, and she was happy to take Aaron Gordon. Melo had agreed on Aaron Gordon for Lauri Markkanen and Vernon Carey Jr. And then I wake up a few days later and he's gone. So Melo claims to have forgotten that he was included in our talks. So that was a bit disappointing because I thought he could be a good backup center for me, but that's okay. And we flipped it around, and I ended up getting Marko Simjonovic. I had to check how to say that name. I've probably butchered it, but I also checked that he was drafted by Ben as a Euro stash. So I took that as a tick of approval. And for voiding the deal with Carey, Melo was kind enough to throw a second or 2 in. And then the deal, that was it. It ended up being there's one more bit. And then I had, for salary purposes, had to move a player. It ended up being Justice Winslow. And I had to get some seconds for him to use in the Warriors deal for Covington. So it ended up being a 5-team deal with a lot of moving parts and a lot of useful pieces for each of those teams. But I'd taken 3 players of mine and turned them into 5 or 6. And that was what I was really wanting to do. I didn't want to come into free agency with so many open roster spots, because I've failed 2 years in a row now to even fill a team, and I've ended up having to burn assets just to add bench fodder guys to have a full roster. So I feel a lot more calm going into this season with a lot more assets under contract. But that was it, a 5-6 teamer. Again, thank you to everyone involved. It was a really great, easy negotiation process, and I think all the teams got better. I think they got what they were after, and that's the best outcome when it comes to trading. Now, this is where it got fun. So that was the first trade in 4 or 5 months for me. And this is where it got fun. I had 48 hours to trade any of those players that I'd just received. And I scoured the league looking for potential opportunities. So I saw Lauri as a player who could possibly start for me, likely off the bench. Now, that's a lot of money to have $17 million on that guy. But he's a tall shooter, pretty athletic player who is playing really well in the NBA. Now, I thought he would be more valuable and impactful to somebody else's team than he would be for me. So I shopped around and I found a team that I think had a big need at starting power forward, and that was Brooklyn. And then he had not much of a use for Marcus Morris Sr. off the bench. Morris Sr. has pretty strong scoring instincts and likes to shoot. And B. Reese was worried that he'd be a bit too shot happy, and was happy to send him to me. Obviously, he's worth a lot less than Laurie as an asset, and he's probably not as good in 2K. So I was able to add a first. I had to send out 2 seconds, and they were my last 2 seconds, I think, for that point at that point in time. But I got to bank a future first that is 5 years away, but nonetheless, I got to bank a future first. And instead of having all my players trade blocked I then had Marcus Morris, who was unblocked for 48 hours, sorry. So I flipped out Laurie for Marcus Morris and a few seconds, and I banked it first on top of that. And then Josh had come back from his Euro trip. He'd sobered up, and he hit me up saying that after getting Lowry and having Booker, who can play point guard, having Oladipo, who can play point guard, Derrick Rose was just withering away and a wasted asset on that team. So wanted to talk Rose for Morris. We haggled a little bit, and then it ended up being Morris and a second rounder for Derrick Rose. So Derrick Rose, the much better 2K player, a lot more volatile as an asset with his health. But the Wizards didn't need a home run. They just needed a big wing who can shoot. And I think he fit the team really, really well. And I was able to cover Morris's loss and add a guard in because I feel like I have 3 tall wings who are going to start for me already. So I was a bit worried about Rose's health. So I took that risk to get the better 2K player. And the flip happened. And that was the end of my player moves for a little while. And I wasn't able to find another deal for Rose within that first 48 hours. So he became trade blocked, which was fine. So in between my next move of players, I was able to secure an extra first round pick in another deal with Sacramento. So I feel like I sent out the least valuable pick. Sorry, I received the least valuable pick and 2 future seconds that are a bit further down the track. And the Kings were able to get back their own 2024 pick, which could be really valuable to them if they decide to take it a bit easier in 2024. It's a great security blanket. And I also had to give the Sacramento Kings a second, and I also had to send GMs. So it ended up being 3 firsts to me for 2 firsts, a second, and a GM, and 40 GMs. But when you consider how poor hopefully the Portland 2023 first will be, I think it was quite an even move, and I had some points to move, and Clem needed some points. So I think it served the purpose for both of us. And then that started it again. So a lot of my plays were unblocked, and this is just, we're up to almost present day. So this was last week. Found out that Derrick Rose was beloved by Titles, the GM of the Warriors, and had negotiations with him back and forth for a few days. I didn't quite get the return or the yield that I was looking for, but then I had to consider, as I mentioned earlier, the volatility of that Rose asset. I was able to swap firsts. I don't think the first I got back will be great, but I think it'll be that middle of the round with a tiny bit of upside to be higher, but I could be wrong. And it just means I back myself in again after moving my 2023 first in that deal. I was able to get a couple of other seconds and was able to get Will Barton back, which I had identified as a player who could be the starting shooting guard for myself based on his defensive ability, his speed, playmaking, and finishing. And I thought I was done at that point. I'd covered my shooting guard hole, and I had then figured that Seth Curry might be a 6th man. At this point, I still had 2 really good vets coming off the bench, and I was still wondering whether or not that was too many, if I was not maximizing the pieces that I had. So I then kicked the tires on some other deals. And Charlotte, Craig and I had talked weeks earlier about a Derrick Rose Bogdanovich trade for Hayward and a first. And Craig, rightly so, had said, I've just got point guards everywhere. There's no way I could fit Derrick Rose in, and we left it there. But even though I felt the return for Rose wasn't all that great on its own, it opened up the possibility for a trade to the Hornets because he did have a need for a wing. In fact, 2 wings. So Craig was able to send out Hayward to me for Bojan Bogdanovic and Will Barton, and I was able to get the 2027 first off the Hornets. Obviously, there was a lot of hysteria from Nelson, but I was looking at Hayward, and it took me a day to figure out if I actually wanted this deal, because he's not played more than half the games in a season for about 4 or 5 years, which at $30 million can be quite crippling to a team whose aspirations are to win as many games as possible and to survive a playoff series. So I took the risk. I think his ratings look great as a third, fourth option type on my team. He has great height and speed combination, but he's never healthy. So he's going to be really hard to move. He's got a 15 GM trade fine to move him. So I'm really hoping, for my sake, he not only fits in his role, but he plays enough games, because I think I will actually need to keep him. He'll be a hard contract to move, unless there is that deal out there where I get to add another star player and attach lots of assets to Hayward. I think I'll give him a try as either the sixth man and Seth Curry can start, or the shooting guard, and just run a very, very tall team. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm totally tapped out of trades now. And I'm looking at my roster, and I'm quite happy with the balance. I'm quite happy with the extra pick assets I was able to add in those deals. I've burnt a lot of GMs carrying out those deals, but that's the price of business. Yeah, and that's where we're at. And I'm trying to now look for a veteran point guard just to back up, but there's really not that many. It's a very young league now, and I think teams are more willing or see more benefit in adding that younger player who may become something, other than an older veteran who is already declining. But yeah, they're steady, great presence, but I think there's less to yield from that, from signing that player, than a younger player. So I found it really hard. I haven't found one target yet besides George Hill from the Spurs, but I don't think I'll be going there. I think 4 million is a little bit too much, but also Nelson might not want to trade into me. So yeah, anyway, that was insight into the deal, into all of the Portland deals. I mean, I'm not saying I hope you learned something, but if you've listened, I hope you found it interesting. A lot of moving pieces, and I hope if you're out there looking for a trade, I hope you find it. It's the best part of the league for mine. I love the passion and emotion it brings out in everybody who's so biased and sentimental about their pieces, and is playing that mental or that poker game, bluffing strength and faking weakness to try and get certain deals through. I think it's fascinating. I think it's a great insight into the psyche and mentality of human beings. And it means you get to craft and shape your team however you see fit. And I think that is why we play fantasy sports and why we love the NSL so much. So thank you to everyone who's in the league. I love it. I'm loving getting to know people a bit better and talking shit and talking trades. Thank you to the admins again. I can't thank those people enough who help fuel the league in terms of the website, Pete, in terms of all the information, Lattice, Ben, Leroy. I feel like I'm missing somebody. No, maybe not. I feel like I am. Anyway, if I have, I don't mean any disrespect. Thank you to those people who put in extra work outside of their teams to allow the rest of us GMs to focus and love and look after our own teams. So I don't know what's coming next, but I'm really enjoying the pods. I'm really enjoying talking about NSL because I do love it so much, and I think there's lots to learn. And I like hearing from other people in their pods as well. So have a nice chilled off season if that's what you like. And if you like sticking around, there'll be more content, but it's good to hear from you on the Discord, and it's fun to talk about my team. So thank you very much. All the best. Go Blazers.